This is AHA Business Radio, creating AHA moments for business, by business, and about business, providing opportunities to discover information to help you run your business and guide your decision making. The more you know, the better decisions you make. AHA Business Radio is produced by Allan Hirsh Advisors. For more information, log on to ahabusinessradio.com. To join in tonight's conversation, call 410-481-1300. Now, here's your host for AHA Business Radio, Allan Hirsh.
Good evening. Welcome to tonight's show. My guest this evening is Katherine Pugh, Maryland State Senator and a Democratic candidate for mayor of Baltimore City. I always like to start my show by asking everyone this question because it's something that's very important to me. What motivates you to get up in the morning and go to work? Particularly the fact that you're after this new job as mayor of the city and leaving the Senate, where you've been a great contributor, to now become mayor of Baltimore City.
Well, this is my dream job. So I get to get up every day and do what I think is great and best for the citizens that I serve. I've done that for a decade as it relates to being a state senator. But I think for me, it's always been about taking on challenges and being excited about whatever is before you. You know, what people don't know is that I actually started out as a banker, and I really enjoyed the field. But then I went on to the Council of Equal Business Opportunities to help minorities start their own businesses. And then I worked for one of the greatest mayors of all time, William Donald Schaefer. And so I've had a variety of experiences, Dean and Director of Strayer Business College, own my own business, a public relations firm, have written 3 children's books, 70,000 in the public school systems and daycare centers throughout the city of Baltimore, working on a baby clothing line. So I've had quite a bit of experience, and I tell people that everything that I've done to this point has prepared me for this moment. So I get up every day excited to meet the challenges of the day.
Well, thank you for that. So so you've taken the challenge, and everything you say you've done is to become mayor. So why do you want to become mayor?
Well, let me just say, I'm majority leader of the Senate.
Right.
So I did not see this opportunity coming back towards me. I really didn't. I am in the leadership of the Senate of Maryland, president of the National Black Caucus of state legislators nationwide, get to interact with legislators all across the nation, helping to set policy and change the environment for African Americans, other minorities, and pulling people together all across the country to focus on issues that I think are relevant around economic development and creating equity in this nation. So I was not looking for this opportunity. Everybody knows that this is my second go-round shot at becoming mayor. But 5 years ago, I ran against Stephanie Rawlins Blake for mayor. But one of the things that we committed to when we ran was to be positive about the city, to focus on the issues. And as I said to her, for me at that time, it was about vision and what I saw as a pathway to successful Baltimore. But at the end of the day, my focus would always be on the message and not the person. Because at the end of the day, I wanted to be able to win, lose, or draw, to walk across the street and have a conversation with the mayor, whether it's myself or someone else who was running against me. And after losing that particular election, I ran into Stephanie Rawlins Blake, Mayor Stephanie Rawlins Blake, at a parade and asked her if we could have that conversation. And she and I marched together at a community parade, and she offered me a ride back to my car. And a few weeks later, we sat down and had lunch together and have been good friends since.
Well, that's great, and that shows that if you do get elected, there'll be some continuity of what's going on.
Absolutely, it's been great working with her, and beginning to. We got to wait till November the 8th. We got to get elected, and then we'll work on a transition.
I think that's period. 5 weeks from today.
Yeah. Almost less than that, yep.
Yep, 5 weeks today is the election.
Yes.
This is a Tuesday.
Very excited. Well, early voting starts.
Yes.
In 2 more weeks.
Yeah. So you mentioned a vision. So what is that vision of Baltimore City that you want to see accomplished?
Well, there's several things. When I think about, I always tell people, when you lift the least, you lift all of us. When I think about the 3,000 people who sleep on our streets every day, the 76,000 people who are unemployed, the 25% of the population that doesn't have a high school diploma, the 38% of the population that doesn't read above the 8th grade, and the lack of equity and inclusion and diversity and business opportunities in the city. I think they're all things that can be worked on. I think about the crime problem that the city has and the need for more community public relations and relationships, and I see that changing. There's a lot to tackle, but at the same time, I think part of it is about how we lead people and pull people together and get us all focused and working on these issues and putting some solutions that are transparent, that people can really see an end to whatever those problems you decide that you want to tackle.
So you've mentioned a number of things.
Yes.
So let's start with the high unemployment in Baltimore City.
Yes.
How do you propose to tackle that that problem? And it is a problem.
It is a problem. And so let me tell you that one thing that we don't lack creation of is jobs in and around Baltimore City, 25,000 jobs at the port. You think about what Port Covington is going to bring to the city. You look at what's happening in Arundel Mills, which is right outside the city. You think about Amazon. We got over 25,000 jobs being generated just today, and that's not even going to the complete private and public sector of the city. So my thought was, and this was interesting because I woke up one morning about 4:30 in the morning, and I was thinking about 76,000 people who are unemployed. And I know some people have heard this story before, and I said, my God, in this day and age of technology, please help me understand why we can't take jobs to people. Because we know, and I tell people we don't need to study the problems of Baltimore anymore because everybody has studied them. University of Baltimore's Baltimore Neighborhoods Indicators Alliance, Baltimore Neighborhood Indicators Alliance has outlined for the city of Baltimore where unemployment is at its highest. We know, for example, that the Old Town Mall area is the #1 unemployed area in the city, Cherry Hill being among the top 10. And so my thought was, why can't we mobilize, create mobile units, instead of trying to set up offices all over the place? Let's create mobile units and go directly to the citizens and, stop in these neighborhoods, go out, talk to people, work on getting and set goals for, hiring people on a regular basis. So my thought was, can I have 7 mobile units going to 7 different parts of the city?
So I don't mean to interrupt, but I am going to interrupt. What do you mean by mobile units? These are units that will...
Mobile units that have job information, because in this day and age of technology, we can download that information of where jobs are onto mobile units, go out into those neighborhoods and communities and talk to people about getting them employed. And let me just say, let me finish, because at 4:30 in the morning, it sounded like a good idea. A lot of things sound good.
I've had some good ideas at that time in the morning as well.
It sounds good. And so I said, well, let me just... At 7:30 in the morning, I called up a corporate executive and I said, I want to run this idea by you. And he started laughing. I said, well, maybe it's not such a great idea. But I had also done some research, and I knew that Milwaukee was doing something very similar with laptops, going out into the neighborhoods and talking directly to people and getting them employed. And so he started laughing, and I said, what's wrong? He says, I'm not laughing at you. I'm laughing because I had this conversation with the library some months ago, and we've developed a mobile unit for them. Cost us about $350,000 to outfit it, put the data and information there. And so they want to, he said, but what they don't have is what you have, setting specific goals for hiring people and going directly to specific communities based on data and information that's available to us. And so I said, great. Had another conversation with another major corporation. They're willing to do the same thing. So now we have 2. And so I'm looking at 5 to 7 with a goal of combining them with the Office of Employment Development. Instead of people sitting in their offices, go on these units, go out to those neighborhoods, get people employed with the goal of employing X amount of people a day. If you got 7 units and you say you got to employ 10 people a day, that's 70 people a day, that's $350 a week, that's 17,000. And in 4 years, you could really tackle the problem. That's if everything is perfect, and we know that it's not.
Right. So one of the problems that I know in talking, I've had a number of people, guests on the show, talking about the issue of transportation in Baltimore. Mm-hmm. If you actually go out and take the job opportunities, which you're talking about, out to them, then how do you, once they have the opportunity, how do we get them from a Cherry Hill, for example, to Canton? Or Cherry Hill, if the jobs happen to be in Owings Mills or Hunt Valley? how do we get them when we have a very antiquated
right? And
transportation
those
system?
are the conversations that we're having at the state level. And one of the things, like when I talked to David Hillman, who's built up Anne Arundel County, he says, about 60% of my workers come from Baltimore City, but it takes them 2.5 hours to get there, 2.5 hours to get back. That's 5 hours of traveling. I'm talking to Arundel Mills, which takes you 20 minutes to, 10 to 15 minutes to drive from downtown. So why wouldn't you create a rapid bus system that goes directly to the airport to Arundel Mills? Start out with vans. Let's get people to work every day. And so that's part of the conversation that you have with the city, the state, your surrounding counties. How do we make it easier for people to get to work?
Well, I think that's a great idea. When we come back from the commercial break, we'll continue the conversation with Katherine Pugh, the Democratic candidate for mayor. I'm Allan Hirsh of Allan Hirsh Advisors. And as we go to the break, we have the traffic update. And later in the show, I have the AHA Business Trivia Contest. Again, I'm Allan Hirsh of Allan Hirsh Advisors, and this is AHA Business Radio on CBS Sports Radio, 1300 AM.
Now back to AHA Business Radio, creating aha moments for business, by business, and about business. Once again, here's your host, Allan Hirsh.
Welcome back to the show. My guest tonight is Katherine Pugh. She's in the studio. She's a Maryland State Senator and the Democratic candidate for mayor. If you have any questions or comments, please call 410-481-1300. Love to have your input and questions for Katherine Pugh, the Democratic candidate for mayor. Hear input from you all out in the audience. Please give us a call. So one of the things we talked about was about the jobs. Mm-hmm. The other part, how do you plan to build some of besides just those jobs, economic development in Baltimore City? There are areas of the city where there's no retail.
Absolutely.
There are no supermarkets.
You're so right.
How do we develop jobs in those areas of the city?
But let me just say, because we should acknowledge that there are more supermarkets in the city now in probably the last decade.
Correct. Yeah. I know the one in Howard Park that opened.
Howard Park, Mondawmin. You've got the fresh food markets
downtown in East Baltimore, right. In the East Harbor.
Right. So we have to acknowledge that they are growing. But let me just say, when I think about economic development, I'm actually headed to New York to meet with Bloomberg in the morning because they have what they call the Bloomberg School of Government that helps mayors all around the world. And sitting down with Ron Daniels, the president of Johns Hopkins University, he offered to provide me with information on the Bloomberg School of Government. And a couple of weeks ago, I was invited to New York to celebrate the 100th anniversary of the Bloomberg School of Public Health. And I met.
So people don't know this I believe, is all affiliated with the Johns Hopkins University here in Baltimore.
Yes, because Bloomberg, people don't know this, probably don't know, went to Johns Hopkins University.
Yes,
just gave them $360 million.
Which was the latest contribution.
Because I'm sure it's given them.
Probably over $500 million already.
Now, absolutely. But anyway, so I got earlier to meet with the Bloomberg School of Government, talk about some of my major concerns, and one of them is economic development. Because under Schaefer, we created what was called the Baltimore Development Corporation, but we don't. And I challenge people to take a look. If you look at Baltimore County, Prince George's County, Howard County, everybody has an economic development department. Even the state of Maryland has an economic development commerce department. So whose responsibility is it to go out and attract new business, to market new business, to bring business, to create more jobs, to make sure that employers stay here and grow? Whose responsibility is it to create a retail strategy for the city that currently does not exist? And, we're very developer-driven in the city, which in some ways is good. But at the same time, we have to participate in that so that we create the retail corridors and support the retail corridor. Look at Baltimore Street on the west side. I mean, it's devastated. But yet we now see University of Maryland coming over to that side of town. So that creates an opportunity to develop those neighborhoods and communities. Who's going to be responsible?
What is it called? It's Pigtown, and what's the...
It's called the Biotech
Park. That's on the other side of Martin Luther King Boulevard.
And the Southwest Partnership and the Main Street corridor, because I've actually invested in that area because I have a little dress shop down there on Washington Boulevard because I believe that it's going to be one of the up-and-coming areas of the city. But we need to, and I've got Bloomberg looking at this. So what I've done, and my team has done, was have conversations with the Bloomberg School of Government around areas that we're really concerned about. Rebranding Baltimore, crime, education, economic development, quality of life for all of us. What 5 cities in America are have gotten it right? What are some of the things that we need to be looking at in terms of rebranding Baltimore? What is it that we need to do to create a more vibrant economic development city? And how do we deal with that at the same time, deal with the problems of drug addiction, homelessness, and all of those issues that impact us every day? And so I tell people that this is an opportunity for us to look at where we are and say, how do we do this better than we've done it before? And I think that every mayor that follows another mayor should do it greater than the mayor that they follow.
It's like anything else. You follow on the shoulders of the people before you.
Absolutely.
And you build on their successes. And you examine where they weren't successful.
Exactly.
And you create new visions and new strategic thinking around what needs to be done.
Well, that's why when I campaigned and I stayed positive and I talked about the glass being half full as opposed to half empty. I mean, vacancy of values has some values, but can we do it better than we're currently doing it? I got to tell you about this conversation I was having with Ron Daniels on Labor
Before
Day.
you do that, I just want to remind all the listeners that I have Katherine Pugh, the Democratic candidate for mayor, in the studio with me. If you have any questions or comments, please call 410-481-1300.
So I was sitting down Labor Day weekend, and the president of Johns Hopkins University and I decided to have a cup of tea on Labor Day weekend, Monday. I think Monday, that's when Labor Day is. And so we were sitting down talking, and he was asking me about my vision for Baltimore. And I said, do you realize that the city owns 15,000 board-up houses, and there are probably another 15,000 that are owned by private folks? And I said, one of the questions that I want to ask of Bloomberg, and one of the things that I'm thinking is, how do we as a city, as the person who prays to be the next mayor, say on day one, I need you to have a plan if you privately are holding properties in Baltimore City. And if you don't give me a plan in 90 days, we can claim eminent domain. But, can you afford to do that? And secondly, can we create a lottery system? Because the Dollar House program obviously worked.
I was going to ask that question on this comment. It worked during Mayor Schaefer,
but what
40 years ago.
40 years ago, but at that time there was more federal dollars flowing into the city under the Urban Development Action Grant money, which is what helped to create those Dollar House programs for individuals to participate. So I said to him, why can't we create like a lottery type system where, people, whether it's $10, $20 or $100, you join a lottery, and we deem areas where, for example, there's 70 boarded up houses that we can redevelop. And so we're going to draw 90 names for those 70 homes, and we're going to qualify them and assist them into becoming homeowners and give them those houses and charge them a lower property tax rate because we're trying to lower
assuming they invest in the same similar type of program, assuming they invest in it, you give them the opportunity. And with interest rates the way they are now,
it's great. It's a great time. So, but let me just tell you what happened. I looked at Ron Daniels and I could almost see tears in his eyes. He says, Katherine. I said, what? He said, we're doing that. Have you heard of Eager Village? I was like, no.
I haven't either.
He said, you got to come. He said, on Saturday, we are drawing names for 42 individuals. We, Johns Hopkins, has invested $35,000 per person. We hope that they show up. We hope that we'll have.
Is this part of the East Side development?
Yes. He said, we hope that there'll be 40 people there. And he was like nervous. And so I said, I'm coming. So I get there. Unbelievable. Black, white, Latino, Asian, young, old, married, straight, gay, young, families. It was amazing. I got to draw the first 10 names.
Oh, that's great.
All 49 lots gone. All 49. Everybody, they got to pick out their lots, and those houses are going up. That's a new development in Baltimore City. New taxpayers in Baltimore City, and they can walk to work.
And with 15,000...
we can do that. And so what he was showing me is that if we can do it there, we can do it everywhere.
Absolutely.
You think about Park Heights with 65 acres of land to develop, right?
Yeah.
And that has slots impact money, guaranteed $120 million coming into Park Heights over the next 15 years. And what I've said to Park Heights is stop Stop, because you need to be doing what Hopkins is doing. You need to be leveraging opportunity. And this is not social services money. This is money for development. This is not money to cure every social ill in Park Heights. This is money that you can say to a developer, if you invest $10 million, I'll invest $500,000 for the infrastructure, or for those 140 some odd houses that are vacant on Park Heights Avenue, the entrance and exit to Park Heights. We're going to start there first, and we'll invest $25,000 in every individual who takes a house in that particular area. You can do that. That's what you have money for.
And I'm not technically in that, but I would assume you can create bond programs within the city. Surely you can. With a loan, which present the low interest loans to those homeowners. That then get and the payback of the mortgages that the city can provide through that low interest municipal bond will pay off the bonds.
Yeah, we can do that, but I'm telling you, Park Heights is unique. And so will other parts of the First District and Federal Hill, because they too will end up getting slots impact money. Pigtown will end up getting more. They've got those wonderful developments over there, Camden Crossing. So this is a great time in Baltimore, and people are moving back to our city.
I think you're right. I think, and you see what the two largest, and we'll talk about this a little bit about economic development. You're talking about the housing, which I think is utmost important. You need places for people to live. But Baltimore City and with the harbor, you've got the two largest unused tracts of land, any harbor probably in the United States, that are now in process of being developed. Port Covington, and which is I forget how many acres, but 3,100 acres at the former Sparrows Point. I know it's in Baltimore County, but it's still business and jobs and everything for the metropolitan, for Baltimore City employee citizens and so forth.
Certainly, it butts right up against Baltimore City.
Yeah, absolutely.
In fact, I just met with the Anne Arundel County Executive Shue. And we were talking about some of the things that we'll be able to do together, some of the things that we want to focus on, economic development in both of our areas.
Okay. We have to go to break now.
Okay.
So when we come back, I'm going to continue the conversation with Katherine Pugh, the Democratic candidate for mayor of Baltimore City. And later in the show, I have the AHA Business Trivia Contest. I'm Allan Hirsh, and this is AHA Business Radio on CBS Sports Radio, 1300 AM.
Now back to AHA Business Radio, creating AHA moments for business, by business, and about business. Once again, here's your host, Allan Hirsh.
Welcome back. I'm talking with Katherine Pugh, Democratic candidate for mayor and currently senator of from the city for the state. And we've been talking about some of her ideas and visions for Baltimore City if she gets elected in 5 weeks from today.
Yeah.
I just want to put a plug in. It's important. Everybody vote.
Please.
Whoever you vote for, please go out and vote.
Right.
It's the most important thing we do as citizens. And I just want to say that I haven't missed an election since I'm eligible to vote. That's how important it is to me.
Let me tell you, Allan, the reason I thought it was so important to vote, my parents used to get dressed up like they were going to church. My dad would put on a suit and his hat, and my mother her hat and her gloves. So we knew when they walked out that door that they were going to do something that was really important.
Yeah.
And it wasn't Sunday.
Mm-hmm. Well, we've been talking about a number of things. One of the things that you've mentioned, and we were talking about, is the crime in Baltimore.
Yes.
And how do you envision, and it's not just in Baltimore, it's across the country, it's inner cities. A lot of it is the reaction between the community and the police. There's drug crime. So when we talk about vision, what is your vision for changing the attitude, and how do we break this continuing cycle of crime in our city?
Well, let me just say I sat on the Criminal Justice Reform Commission, actually co-chaired it this past session, and we changed about 23 different areas of law. One was around training and cultural diversity. The other was around looking at all of the issues that relate to policing. We've taken some things away from our police force, like educational opportunities. We don't educate them with the same opportunities that we used to. The other issue is how we create that trust in the community for police and police for the community. The respect has to go both ways. And part of that is having civilians sit on trial boards. And what we put into the law.
By trial boards, please explain what you mean.
Trial boards.
Not trials within the judicial system.
No.
But you're talking about other kinds of trial boards.
Well, yes, with the police.
In other words, when police evaluate a issue or a situation, having civilians on that, not just police.
Right. And what you do and what we put in place was training for those individuals. And those individuals would train for at least a year so that they could know what their role and their responsibilities are. They would be selected by the commissioner to serve, and it would be 2 individuals on the police trial board. Not the majority, but it is important in order to develop that trust factor that is really important. I sit on patient safety and quality for the University of Maryland because one of the questions was said that, well, you're not a police officer. How do you get, how are you able to judge? Well, as a patient safety and quality person for the University of Maryland, I'm not a doctor, but I do get to judge whether or not the offenses that are done by certain doctors warrant certain responses as a community member. So I think that will go a long way in developing the trust among community members for our police department. And also, when you think about 75% of your police officers not living in the city, and this year, with Mayor Stephanie Rawlins-Blake, she and I put in incentives to allow to give to first-time responders to live in our city. That includes firemen and police officers, emergency folk, so that we can get more people living in our city. I think it's essential that when you take a paycheck from the city, that you live in the city. Because when we think about a city that was built for 1 million people, now down to 640,000, there's certainly room for growth. And we have every kind of house that you can possibly think of in Baltimore City, whether it is a high-rise condominium, an apartment building, a single-family home, a row house. They're here. And we have the opportunity to build more. And we have to grow our city. When you think about the power that we've lost in Annapolis because of the shrinkage of our city, we were once a city that had 10 senators sitting in the state of in Annapolis, representing us, a powerhouse. And now we're down to 5.25. And if we don't grow our city, we'll be down to 5 when redistricting comes around.
That's right.
That's important.
And I just want to remind the audience, if you have any questions for Katherine, Pugh, or myself, please call 410-481-1300. So you just talked about some of the problems. How do we change the environment? What are some of the things we can do?
Well, first of all, quality of life is a major issue for our city. When you think about how dark Baltimore is, and people say, what do you mean? It's dark. It's dark in some neighborhoods. You can't walk in every neighborhood like you can down in the harbor or around Harbor
So you're
East.
talking about putting
more lights in the city. And I've had this conversation with BG&E and other folks, and they're looking at putting additional lighting in communities. We got to brighten up our city. I was in New York 2 weeks ago, and someone asked me, did I need somebody to walk me to the train station at 11 o'clock at night? I said, no, it's bright, it's light. I mean, I don't have any fears walking the streets in New York because it's light and it's bright. We got to brighten up our neighborhoods. And I'm not talking about shining those police lights into communities. I'm talking about
just old-fashioned street lights.
Old-fashioned, beautiful street lights that illuminate communities and make people feel safe when they're walking around.
Okay. One of the questions that as we talked before, I went to school with Kurt Schmoke, a former mayor. He proposed when he was mayor the idea of decriminalizing drugs because he felt that would, in a sense, do away with a lot of the crime that and this was 30 years ago, I guess.
And now we have.
And now we have all of the, 85% of all of our prisoners are drug-related
crimes, right.
What is your thought on that process?
Well, I do think we have too many people who are incarcerated for drug crimes. And I think we have too many people who are incarcerated because they have drug addiction problems, which means in many cases they're mentally ill people who have issues. And we're not dealing with the mental health issues that many of them face. And as you well know, back in the early 70s, when we shut down most of the mental health institutions and people don't have places to go. I mean, that creates what we see on our streets every day, the homelessness and the helplessness. And so we really got to focus on all of those issues.
Okay. Do have a caller?
Let me go ahead and put you on hold. We'll get you on in just a moment.
Okay, caller Ronald from Baltimore. Ronald, you on the air? You there?
Yes, I am.
Okay, you have a question or a comment?
Yes, I want to know her plan for installing, or what is her idea about putting trash cans around the city?
Well, and I think that's a great question.
Ron. Thank you for calling. Which we'll answer that offline. Thank you.
Thank you.
Let me tell you why that's a great question. I was in a meeting once and I asked someone, this was city leaders, about trash cans at bus stops. And I started taking pictures of trash cans that are overflowing in our city. There's some parts of our city where we got to clean more than once a week, whether that's North Avenue, and we got to have trash cans at every bus stop. You can't put a bench at a bus stop and not put a trash can, because people sit down, they come to the bus stop, they got their coffee in their hand. You can't get on the bus with the coffee. You can't get on the bus with the bun. You got to throw it away. And so
where do you throw it?
So where do you throw it? If there's no trash can at the bus stop, you invite people to drop stuff on the ground. I mean, everybody won't stick it in their pocketbook like I would, but you gotta, you have to accommodate.
Reminds me of a story about my uncle, but anyway.
But you have to accommodate. Yeah, and we want a clean city. That's part of the quality of life for people. And so, I want our streets to be clean. I want a better quality of life, and I want trash cans at every bus stop. And I want us to feel great about our city. And part of it is what we do. Schaefer, when he was mayor, he made a game out of it, trash ball.
Right.
I get upset when I see somebody throw trash out the window. My brother told me I had to stop, yelling at people about that, because somebody might do something that's not really healthy for me. So I don't want to yell at people. I want everybody to take pride in the city, as I do. Going back just a little bit on the public safety issue, because I think this all ties in. I remember a time when you would walk into a classroom and you would ask the class, how many people want to be police officers? Young boys' hands would fly up in the air. That doesn't happen today.
Right.
And so you got to ask yourself, why is that? And it's interesting because I say so, but I was a safety patrol person. And then I said,
so was I.
I was a safety patrol person. Everybody I know, at least in my generation, were safety patrolled. So I had this conversation with our police commissioner. I said, can you imagine creating safety patrols and giving, you got to be at least in the 6th grade and you have to have good grades, to qualify. Can you imagine what that instills in the minds of young people?
Well, there's a question that I have.
About being, taking responsibility for safety at your school. And I just think that all, when it bubbles up, creates a whole different mindset about quality of life, safety, and cleanliness of your communities and your neighborhoods.
We have to go to our next break. And when we come back, I'll have the AHA Business Trivia Contest and continue my discussion with Katherine Pugh, Democratic candidate for mayor. I'm Allan Hirsh of Allan Hirsh Advisors. This is AHA Business Radio on CBS Sports Radio, 1300 AM.
Now back to AHA Business Radio, creating AHA moments for business, by business, and about business. And now it's time for tonight's AHA Trivia Question, where you can win great prizes from the AHA Business Radio Show. Call 410-481-1300 if you know the answer. And now with tonight's AHA Trivia Question, here's your host, Allan Hirsh.
Tonight's trivia question is, who is the last mayor to serve more than 2 terms of mayor of Baltimore City? If you think you know the answer, please give us a call at 410-481-1300. And the winner, of the person with the correct answer, will receive a gift certificate to the 1010 American Bistro, a member of the Bagby Restaurant Group. And for those who have been listening to the show, it's a name I've mentioned. No, you can't answer.
I know.
I know you. I'm sure you do. We've talked about him on the show, Katherine. So just want to remind everybody, I am talking to Katherine Pugh, Democratic candidate for mayor.
So not fair.
Sorry. It's one of the restrictions they put on me.
Can't win.
Yeah.
But we will win.
Well, So one of the things I wanted to talk about that we haven't talked about is education.
Yes.
And I have a cousin who's sold a business, has been doing some teaching, applied for a job as a math teacher at Woodlawn High School. Mm-hmm. And the principal, in sitting down with him and interviewing him, says, you have to understand, the vast majority of the kids that come into Woodlawn High School have a math level at 3rd or 4th grade. What can we do to improve the education in Baltimore City? And to me, it's not about making them available to go to college. No. Because 50, 60%, I don't care what community, don't go to college in the first place. But those who aren't going to college, I don't believe we're properly preparing them in the school system to get jobs. Okay. So what can we do, and what are some of your plans with education in Baltimore City?
It's what we do with our children at their earliest age that will change the trajectory of our children. And I say that because I am one of 7 children whose mother was a stay-at-home mom, and my dad went to work every day in a factory, and my mother's job was to teach us how to read, write, and do at that time we called it arithmetic. And they had the World Book Encyclopedia, and I used to tell people I thought my parents were the smartest people in the world, because if I asked my dad where was the Indian Ocean, he'd say, go get the World Book Encyclopedia. If I asked my mother who was Madame Curie, she would say, go get C, the World Book Encyclopedia. And while I would sit there at the age of 3, because that's when they taught me to read, I thought, I just had the smartest parents in the world, because everything I was reading, they already knew. My dad went down to the local school board and got each one of his 7 children a desk. And my mother taught us as though she was our teacher in a school system every single day. My mother always says to me that I have an affinity for classical music because she played Bach, Beethoven, and Brahms when I was in her womb. And so I'm saying that we have to start much earlier, growing and teaching our children. And here's what we're doing now. I don't know if you've heard of Judy Centers.
No, I don't. I've not.
Judy Centers start teaching our children at 6 weeks of age. And so we've got to start teaching our children earlier. And we've got to prepare them earlier. And we've got to make sure that when young people and mothers become pregnant, and this is working with the hospitals, what are the 5 or 6 things that they should be doing immediately when they learn that they're pregnant that will help change the trajectory of our children? The other thing is that we got to continue to invest in our school system. And we have to make our schools ready for young people to learn. The environment has to be made ready for them to learn. I built the first new school in Baltimore along with my cohorts, Fred Ziegler and Fred Lazarus and Steve Ziegler, where I created the Baltimore Design School in the 1500 block of Barclay Street.
Just want to interrupt. We do have a caller, DJ from Baltimore. You're on the air?
Yes, thank you. Hi, Senator Pugh. I heard you speaking on your campaign trail about your ideas on improving the senior conditions in the city. What are some of the ideas that you have about improving our senior communities, creating senior communities, and allowing getting better improvement for the seniors in Baltimore City?
Well, oddly enough,
thank you, DJ. Thank you for the question.
DJ.
We'll take it off the air. Thank you.
But let me just say, if you look around Baltimore and see some of the things that are going on, we're creating some really neat senior living communities, but we need more. One of the problems I have is that we keep building high rises and not some low rises for people, especially folks who age out of their homes, and they want to stay in the neighborhood. They want to stay in the communities, and they can't.
It's also a lot less expensive for government, public services, and for families to age in place.
Absolutely. They want to age in place.
And it's where people want to be. They want to be at home.
They want to be at home. They want to be in their neighborhoods. And so we've got to make resources more available to make those homes into transition facilities so people can stay in their homes. We got to create more senior living neighborhoods in our community so that everybody doesn't have to move to other jurisdictions in order to get the services that they need. Seniors ought to be able to walk out of their places over to, they just redid a beautiful site off of Dolphin Street in Baltimore. Everything is brand new, really beautiful, right across the street from a shopping center. Seniors deserve that. And so we need to make sure that more of those are being developed in our city. I looked at a property right there on Schroeder Street, Schroeder and Baltimore Street, completely renovated. We need to do more. And there's some other areas in our city. But seniors deserve to be able to have senior living communities. And as you talked about a little bit earlier, Allan, people have to have the amenities. They got to be able to walk out and walk across the street to the drugstore. They got to be able to go to the grocery store.
Absolutely. It's building community.
And so we don't want to just build houses. We want to build neighborhoods and communities. And that's what I'm going to be focused on.
Well, thank you very much for that. Still have the trivia question. Who was the last mayor to serve more? I'll let you answer it in a few minutes. To serve more than two terms as mayor of Baltimore City. And he has been mentioned on the show.
That's right.
If anybody was listening.
Quite a gem. Quite a gem.
Yep. So getting back to the education,
yes.
One of my concerns in knowing the city, that we actually have two police forces. Mm-hmm. We have a city police force and a school police force. And my feeling is, that I've seen in other jurisdictions, let me put it this way, other jurisdictions where the real police are in the schools. Mm-hmm. So the students get to know the police officer. If they get into a minor scuffle or a minor situation, they have a police officer they're familiar with and know them that can help them. Mm-hmm. Well, and then you have a conflict when the police in the school systems don't want anything to do, and it's creating more problems, I think more crime. And, kids fighting in the playground happened when I was at school, and now it's a crime. I mean, because of and I think that's something. I'm making my opinion. I really should say, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, let me just say, I think that's a conversation worth having in terms of the combination of the police, the school police, and the city police officers. And in fact, I've had that conversation with our commissioner because in other jurisdictions, they have combined those forces. And it is about getting our communities and neighborhoods comfortable with the police department. And so I think between that, the safety patrol, police officers in our schools, and children getting to know who their local police officers are, and they don't fear them. They see them as someone who's there to protect them and to provide public safety and not to arrest them or to create any harm.
Yeah, I agree. And the other thing that I see in some of the schools, kids are so enthused about learning, and when they get to school,
the environment.
The environment, and how do we change that environment?
Well, as I said, working with some folks, we built one of the first new schools. We got 23 new schools coming to Baltimore, so that's a great thing. So we know that we're going to be renovating, and not only renovating, but building new schools in Baltimore. That's a plus, and it's really important that we have a strong public school system. And I tell people this because when you judge cities, when the outside entities start looking at cities, they look at how bad is your crime rate? What is this? What is the safety of your city? How good is your public school system? What is the quality of life? And that means providing all the amenities, whether it's the retail, the supermarkets, the neighborhood. The
sports teams, the harbor we have, the access to the ocean, access to the mountains.
All those things play a role in terms of the safety of a city and making it more inviting.
So it doesn't look like we have a caller with the trivia question. Okay, yes, we do. We have Carl. Very quickly, Carl, let me get you on the line. Carl, very quickly, what's the answer to the trivia question?
Martin O'Malley?
No, he's only served two terms. Thank you very much for calling, but you got it wrong. Thank you. Appreciate the call. Actually,
Allan.
Katherine, go ahead and tell him.
Kurt Schmoke.
Yep. Kurt, and he and I actually, as I
told
last
mayor served 2 terms.
He served 3 terms.
That's right.
From 1987 to 99.
I'm going to donate my gift.
And I actually graduated from high school with Kurt, and we're planning our 50th reunion
I'm going to donate my gift to our board gentlemen.
Okay, thank you very much. Catherine, time's up.
Yes.
I really appreciate it. Before you go,
yes.
I want to thank you very much for being here. How can our guests, if they want to reach you or your campaign, how do they do that?
It's 410-685-PUGH. That's Pugh. And you can always go online, Katherine Pugh for Mayor. is our website. You can also volunteer at 2201 North Charles Street at our campaign office, the Democratic Party's campaign office. We're really excited. November the 8th, I need everybody out there to vote. Early voting is available for 14 days. We look forward to your participation. And as you said, Allan, it's not about who you vote for. Just vote.
Please. Katherine, thank you very much for being here. I appreciate it. I also want to thank my producer, Nathan, for being here. I want to thank Larry Wilner from LB BizFlix, who videotapes the shows for me now. Please join me next Tuesday at 6 p.m. when my guest will be Joanne Williams, the Executive Director of the Baltimore County Department of Aging. And we'll be talking about aging in place, among other things. This has been AHA Business Radio on CBS Sports Radio, 1300 AM.